Good morning, good morning. Good morning, everybody. Welcome on in. October 1st, a Tuesday, big day. October 1st, welcome on in. Facebook, YouTube, X, Rumble. Everybody, welcome on in. I see Joyce, Lynette, Deborah, all on Facebook. Child of the King on YouTube. Sue on YouTube. Moon Pie on YouTube. Good morning. Joyce on Facebook, Ricky on Facebook, David on Facebook, Sue, aloha. Good morning, everybody. Welcome on in on a Tuesday, Vice Presidential Debate Tuesday. Cassie on YouTube says, good morning, everybody. Please pray for all affected by the hurricane, for all linemen working around clock to restore power. Very dangerous situation. Absolutely agree. Absolutely agree. I know. Never thought it would get to this. I don't understand what the administration. I mean, listen. I don't feel good for all of us who this is going to affect. I don't feel good for, but I mean, electorally, I don't, I don't, I don't see if this starts to affect people how this doesn't work against Biden and Harris. And by the way, it should come up tonight. It absolutely should come up tonight. I don't think the moderators will do it, so I don't know if JD will have a chance to get it in, but should absolutely come up. John says, better late than never. Good morning, all, and Damon. I don't know. Better late than never, meaning what? Me? Well, the thing said 9:30 from the time it was posted at around 8:45. Good morning, everybody. Let some people come on in here. How's everybody doing on a Tuesday? Looking forward to tonight. Looking forward to tonight for sure. Sergeant Arby on YouTube, good morning. Yes, and good morning to everybody in the chat. Welcome on in. Carol on Facebook, good morning. Make sure you hit the like and subscribe, whatever platform you're on, as we continue to try to grow the numbers on all the social media. Hit the like, thumbs up, share, comment. Any engagement, of course, we appreciate. The debate, Dana, on Facebook, the debate is 9 o'clock. It'll be like every other debate, 9 o'clock, 90 minutes, 9 to 10:30. Rav will start coverage, I believe, at 8 o'clock. We will start somewhere in the 8 o'clock hour as well. Alan Delgado has an open invitation, as do all the guys. They have an open invitation and a link to get them right into the show here if they want to join me any morning. They know that. The link never changes for them, so all they have to do is click on it, and they're in, and I can bring them right on. Good morning, darling Damon. Still pondering what exactly happened with Helene. Well, what happened with Helene is something we probably, maybe a century-like devastation. Maybe once a century you see that. Probably worse than Katrina when it's all said and done. If you remember New Orleans, what happened then. And by the way, there's a story there to be told about what happened with George W. Bush and what we've seen from Biden and Harris for the last 4 days. I don't see how you can't make a comparison that it's equally bad, if not worse. If not worse. Remember the picture of Bush flying in the plane over it and the grief he took? I mean, how is it any different than what we've seen from her? I mean, Biden, we just expect it because I don't even think he knows that it happened or what. I mean, but she's the one under the microscope. She's the one who wants to take the reins. I mean, this is why you hate the media and detest them so much, because for them, but she shouldn't be getting away with photo ops and being in San Francisco at fundraisers. And she's not taking any incoming about what her behavior so far. So big night tonight, presidential debate. And thinking about, obviously, Tim Walz saying he's nervous and others, and thinking about how this could affect the top of the ticket. Does it affect the race at all? Most likely not, unless it's an absolute faceplant from Tim Walz, which I give better than 50-50 chance, or at least a 50-50 chance that he could absolutely faceplant. Now, the moderators will probably prevent that from happening, as we know. But he has a lot of explaining to do, a lot of explaining for them, the two of them together, what they would do, but a lot of explaining about what he's done as a governor as an executive right now in the country. Trying to think about how they get around the moderators, how they get Waltz over the finish line. I think the strategy might be to ask Waltz questions, not necessarily about J.D. Vance, but ask him questions about Trump. Well, President Trump said this, Governor Waltz. What do you think about that? Oh, okay. Well, President Trump said this, Governor Waltz. What do you think about that? Instead of asking him, Governor Waltz, why is it that you want to put tampons in boys' bed? No, see, they won't ask him direct questions. If I had a guess, if I'm them and I'm trying to think, how do we get this dunce across the finish line without completely exposing what a moron he is? I think possibly one way to do it would be to ask him questions about other people, other situations. Well, going back to January 6th, Governor Waltz, what was you're an executive of a state, a fine executive. What would you have done? Things like that. I would think they won't ask him about his actual policy. So J.D. Vance is going to have kind of double duty. He's going to have to answer the confrontational questions he'll get from the moderators. But he's also going to have to try to probably refocus some of the policy questions directly to Dummy over there. Because I suspect the moderators, if I had a guess, and we'll see if I'm right, this will probably be not the most biased moderators, because we saw that with ABC. But I think tonight has the ability for the questions to absolutely be the worst of any of the debate, of the two debates, of the three now debates we'll have had. Tonight will probably be the worst as far as subject matter, because they know they have to keep this guy away from getting into deep policy discussions, because JD is going to bury him in that. It's like the clip we played yesterday of what's her name from Tennessee. No, not Claire McCaskill, not from Tennessee. Claire McCaskill. She summed it up. She's nervous for Waltz to go in, and she should be, as they all should be, and I'm sure they all are, because JD will lay him out if this ends up being a policy discussion. So the moderator's only job is to make sure that doesn't happen. So again, I give 0% chance to J.D. Vance doing any harm to the campaign. I give a better than 80% chance that he'll have a good night. I give it a 50-50 chance for Waltz that he could fall completely flat on his face and really look like a moron. But the X factor will be the moderators, and for me, the big X factor is the questions. And what the subject matter is, how they phrase them, and whether they actually ask direct questions of Waltz like they will of JD, or will they ask Waltz questions about other people? Dave on X, Damon forgot we have an X chat. Oh, how is that? How did I forget? No, I did not forget. I forget no chats. I forget no chats. Joyce says JD has leadership skills, exactly. And he will not be thrown off his game. Joanne makes a good point. I'm sure Waltz has all the questions. I would bet I suspect he probably has a good idea of where they're going to go or how they're going to do it. So I saw a really good piece today in the I think it was is it in the American Thinker? And it's entitled Trump in January, with some thoughts about the who's it by actually? Trump in January. This is written by Victoria White Berger. And she has a really good piece in thinking about the election and what is at stake, why is this at stake. And she says, you know, it would be good to feel better about life after January 20th, 2025. But if we're being honest, we all know that'll be more than just lucky to get out of the political hellhole by February 2025. Not only do we have the multiple not-so-veiled threats against Trump life coming from the likes of Schumer, Pelosi, Jeffries, and their devotees, we have the stock market crash predictors who daily warn clients that somehow mysteriously Trump will not be inaugurated even if he's elected. We also have the two actual attempts on Trump's life thus far. We have the legal and media and financial wars against him. Hillary Clinton launched this, so naturally she's now doubled down on her signature effort to dehumanize Trump. The truth about Hillary's Russia scams is out, but that has no effect on their enemies. They all know all along that Hillary was and is a con. To the Democrat Party bosses as well as to the swamp and to the globalists, Trump is a monster only because he is a real and standing threat again to their own long-term ambitions and vices. Patriotism is not, contrary to the recent Hillary endorsement by the New York Times with its forked tongue, what moves the Democrats. The New York Times said today that Kamala is the only patriotic choice. Really? Who knew? She sure hasn't told us that. The Democrats do not like being out of office, ladies and gentlemen, nor do they hand over the reins in good faith. Look at Lincoln, look at Bush, see Al Gore, and of course, Richard Nixon, who got away with far less than your average rogue Democrat these days. Hillary Clinton took some of the White House's bespoke dinner china when she left. That was hers, right? Of course. The Obamas were hideously ungracious to the incoming Trumps. The Obamas wouldn't even leave town, for crying out loud. Democrats are adverse to being nice, to playing fair, and to just going away. One clear reason the January 6th prosecutorial cheerleaders are trying to hold on to the last shred of credibility is, what if they have to pull off another fake insurrection again? Can they count on Antifa to whip it up one more time? Will Congress have a leg to stand on? What if there's no Mike Pence to give them cover this time? What if the votes do go back to the states? What if the Republicans go belly up again? Alternatively, what if the Pentagon actually obeys the commander-in-chief and does provide legitimate security for the Congress and the crowd? What if the Congress is forced this time to follow the constitutional procedures it is charged with in certifying the election if the votes have been tallied without prejudice? What will the Democrats do if there's no question that they have lost this race by both electoral and popular vote? And as losers, they have nowhere to go, no way to cheat any further. No roadblocks in place, no last-minute criminal arrests or any incumbent president to pull off, no assassinations to engineer, no scandals terrible enough to pull up the stops. Will the Congress even pretend to do the right thing? What if they have to wait until January 20th to bring President Trump down because nothing else has worked? Will they be stopped? Can they be stopped? Trump's Democrat and friends' enemies say that their hatred is about saving our democracy. They say it's about joy or security or fairness. None of those terms apply. It is not and never has been about Trump. It is about massive power, securing it, sustaining it, and dictating the decimation of a nation, America, for their globalist paymasters. Now, why won't it work? Because they are instructed by the false historical doomed trinity of isms: communism, socialism, fascism, different suits fashioned by like-minded political tailors, isms that have and will destroy nations. So what regrets the Democrats will almost instantly enjoy if Kamala steps to the govern? Welcome to hell on earth. It'll be too late, barring divine intervention. The Democrats must know she can't do it right or even a little right, even if she wanted to. But the winners will be royally stuck with a suddenly apparent dud act. Or will our blessed nation be reinaugurated? And will its detractors finally let up? Will the endless carping, invasions, vitriol, and lies hit the pause button? Will the Democrats redirect their energies to the field for 2029 or just go away? Will we finally have some domestic peace? And will the foreign wars finally stop? We will have our American dream come back to us and to the world and have a man as president who's a good man, one who can fix our barely survivable economy, our migrant crisis, our persecutions, who does not scorn our deeply held values and beliefs. Again, my friends, vote and pray. There's some thoughts on the upcoming election. All right, a couple other things I want to go over as we've been talking about. Officially now at midnight, dock workers go on strike. Look at this headline, by the way. That could reignite inflation. And that's what we've been saying. Could reignite inflation and cause shortages the holiday season.
What are we gonna do? No work without a fair contract. No work without a fair contract.
We're at the end of a 6-year contract. Okay. And we are in negotiations now for a fair contract. A fair contract. Okay. And a contract not filled with automation. What they need to do is pay these men and women a fair wage. They made billions and billions and billions of dollars, okay? All right, billions and billions and billions of dollars, okay? And during COVID, they ripped off the whole industry, they ripped the government off and every damn body else during COVID, okay? Now, we want them to pay back. They're going to pay back. We mean business. We're going to do it as long as it needs to be done, okay? This is not something that you start and you stop. We're not weak. We're not weak. What we control, as far as the economy is concerned, okay, is unbelievable. Okay? We may be 60,000 members from Maine to Texas, but what we control in the economy is billions and billions and billions of dollars every day. Every day. Okay? And all we want them to do is share. Okay, what we demand, our demands are to share and not to replace us with automation. My men and women work better than any machine around anyway.
There you go. A little bit of what this is all about. Strike by dock workers at 36 ports from Miami to Texas, the first in decades, could snarl supply chains and lead to shortages and higher prices if it stretches on for more than just a few weeks. I mean, again, I don't know how you can talk about this thing in weeks. Weeks, when you're talking about $4.9 billion a day worth of imports coming into these ports, I can't see how we could talk about this in weeks. It would seem to me every day that goes by is terrible news for the consumer, and in turn should be terrible news for the Harris-Biden administration. But weeks, to think that this could go on for weeks. On October 1st, 35 days from an election, 90 days from the holidays, I mean, just seems like this should be a way bigger X factor in the presidential election than it seems to be right now. But I think if people start to sense that this is really going to affect them, maybe that'll change. I don't know. Again, a couple things I hope are brought up tonight. I hope this is one of them. I hope what's going on with Israel and what they're doing on the offensive, I would hope would be brought up, especially to Tim Walz if he supports it. I don't suspect it will be, though. Again, you know, thinking about tonight, I think this is why J.D. Vance will have an easy time with policy, but has a hard time tonight, because for Tim Walz to be exposed, you really need the moderators to pose the right questions, and they're most likely not going to do that. So he's going to have double duty tonight to not only be the smartest guy in the room, but also find a way to make sure that this guy has some policy posed to him, either what he's done as governor or what he would support especially with what's going on in the world. He's got to be asked about current events, how he'd be handling them, how the Harris-Walz administration would be handling them. So there's many things that this guy needs to be asked, and I don't suspect the moderators will be much help. So how JD can navigate that, we'll have to wait and see. A couple other things. Speaking of the debate, this is over at the Blaze today, talking about the debate. And the Walz-Kamala Harris bunker strategy of staying away from everybody. And the disappearance tonight by Walz is probably the only time that we're going to get to hear really directly from him. Stolen valor, will that be brought up? This is the most obvious line of attack, though the corporate media has done its best to claim it ain't so. We'll see if that comes up. Then there's the time that he blamed the mayor of Minneapolis for the deadly rioting in the city. No joke. He went to the Torch City, where a police precinct was among dozens of buildings destroyed by a criminal mob, and slammed the city officials. When the mayor produced his text messages and phone calls begging for the governor to send in the National Guard, Walz's people said those don't count as formal requests. Grammar and formal requests. Truly amazing. Then there's the whole IVF thing. In vitro fertilization is a big part of Walz's identity. It featured prominently in his Democrat National Convention debut as a personally outraged story to highlight Republicans' push to outlaw the fertility treatment, which I don't think there's any Republicans pushing to outlaw it, but that's neither here nor there. Democrat-aligned reporters lapped it up. NBC aired a story about his family's 7-year IVF journey. Taxpayer-funded NPR called Walz a new kind of reproductive messenger. The problem is the whole thing was a lie. Walz and his wife never used IVF, and none of their children were conceived through it. Further, no Republican of any note has called for outlawing the process. Exactly. Yet another blatant political lie. Politically helpful lies are a near constant for Walz. There's the time he claimed school children in Minnesota didn't miss more than 10 days of school during COVID. In reality, he ordered the schools closed for the rest of the school year. He also falsely alleged that Trump wants to create a government agency to monitor women's pregnancies to prevent abortions. Walz said this agency was the brainchild of Conservative Project 2025. Well, you can put on your bingo check card tonight of what terms you'll hear Project 2025 down. I would say at least 2 or 3. At least 2 or 3. Once is an absolute lock of the year. So there's plenty here for JD to get to with Walz. And again, I don't suspect any of them will be brought up by the moderators. And then one last thing, if you want to read a little more, I'm on the about the debate here is over at the Federalist today. MD Kittle, Tim Walz is right to be nervous about his debate with J.D. Vance. And basically this article is about, if we don't have a repeat of, basically if the moderators are not as biased and in the tank, well, we know they are, but if they don't outwardly show it, Walz will have a lot of explaining to do. Tim Walz is telling people that he's just as nervous about facing J.D. Vance as he was the Sunday afternoon in August when he warned Kamala Harris in his Running Mate interview that he was a bad debater. Maybe more nervous. Walz has good reason to be nervous. The face-off is most likely the last debate of the presidential campaign cycle. Much is at stake. Vance has only solidified his reputation as extremely sharp, well-spoken, and quick on his feet. That's exactly right. So everything we've said, everything we've talked about, but it's a good article nonetheless. Want to do a little prep, getting ready for the debate tonight. So, let's see here. All right, let's go over here. Let me take myself out of here so you can see this headline. U.S. has indications that Iran preparing to launch ballistic missile attack against Israel. Oh, there's no sound, someone said? You can't hear this? Okay, hold on a second. Let me try to fix that. You can't hear it. That's no good. No good. If you can't hear it, no good. All right, let's try this one more time.
In this world, but I don't know if now is the time to do that or not. But what he gave to the game, Jim, and what he tried to give the fans was pretty extraordinary. I don't know if I can name another professional athlete who speaks as highly as Pete Rose did about the people who pay to come to a baseball game. And he did that starting in his rookie year in the early 1960s.
And about Trump, by the way, we played that last night.
Well, of course, Bill, you're from Cincinnati, and he touched all of baseball. He lived a great baseball life. He achieved the tremendous heights that you just went through, 17-time All-Star, hit king. So there was glory, and he reached and achieved greatness with that glory. And became that figure, and then he went to the depths of shame by betting on baseball. So it is complicated, and it's very sad in many, many ways.
Yeah. It was in 2000, well, Pete denied it for a long time. It was 2004, that interview with Charlie Gibson on ABC where Pete confessed. And they said, you know, why now? And he said, well, I figured once I denied it in the beginning, I should just stand pat with my answer. But over time, he changed, Jim.
Well, he changed his tune because he had been caught lying by the Dowd report, and he admitted to his own banishment. So by trying to not acknowledge what he had done, you know, he hurt his cause. He hurt himself.
Yeah, and you know what the irony of all of this is with Pete Rose is, I don't know if they'll tonight, or I'm sure during the playoffs, they'll have a moment of silence for Pete Rose. And you know what the irony of all of it's going to be? Is it'll be brought to you by probably DraftKings or FanDuel or Caesars or who knows who. But that's what's laughable about this situation with Pete Rose, especially in the last 3 or 4 years, where every major sporting NFL, NBA, college football, college basketball have basically slapped some gambling firm, sportsbook, on their logo. And they promote it, and the on-air talent promotes it, and they all promote it. It's like it is so embedded now in sports. Nobody watches sports anymore just to watch it. If you don't have action on the game, people don't even watch sports. So the whole hypocrisy of the Pete Rose situation and now him passing away without seeing himself go into the Hall of Fame, and the moment of silence they're going to have for him will be brought to you by a sports book. I mean, it's crazy. Absolutely crazy. So that's what's just nuts about the whole situation.
Military attack from Iran against Israel will carry severe consequences for Iran. End quote.
And the incursion into Lebanon follows the targeted strike in Beirut that took out Hezbollah's top boss. More airstrikes overnight, leveling several buildings in suburban Beirut, where Israeli troops press ahead with a rapidly escalating offensive against Hezbollah, a heavily armed and well-trained militia opening a new front in a year-long war against Iranian-backed adversaries.
Who are saying right now that Iran is preparing and is imminently going to launch missiles at Israel. In fact, I want to share with you a statement from a White House official from not long ago saying, quote, the United States has indications that Iran is preparing to imminently launch a ballistic missile attack against Israel. That White House official going on to say that we are actively supporting defensive preparations to defend Israel against the attack, and that a direct military attack from Iran against Israel will carry severe consequences for Iran. Again, that is the most recent statement from, according to a White House official, Diane, and it certainly does speak to the.
You know, I mean, this just highlights, I mean, the timing of it. I mean, leadership around the world and what happens when there's a void and a vacuum from American leadership. As the world now sees this port strike in the U.S., not good for inflation, not good for oil prices, not good for probably a lot of things. And now what's happening around the world with Israel and now Iran, oil on its way up. I heard them mention that on CNBC here, back over 70. It's not going to take much. You want to see gas prices back at $5 or $6. If you have some kind of prolonged ground war, big incursion, and Biden's at the beach on the weekends. I mean, we never hear from him. He barely makes sense when he speaks. She won't invoke the 25th. And by the way, if you want blame to go around, what are the Republicans doing? The Republicans don't want to challenge any of this. You know, are there procedural things that the Republicans could be doing? Of course they could. To be putting Kamala Harris in a tougher spot as the VP to maybe have to use the 25th? Of course they could. But are you hearing anything from them? No, nothing. Nothing.
0.9, a huge drop, 43.9, 43.4 in July, and there's where it matches up. Yes, yields are holding at 370 level, which is down 8. The curve continues to flatten. At one point, we were looking at 20 basis points. Now that's down to 12. Carl, Sarah, back to you.
Wow, a lot of important information, Rick. Thank you. Rick Santelli. Meantime, the tape dealing with some of these headlines regarding geopolitics. For more, we'll go back to Megan Casella in D.C. Hey, Megan.
Job openings just came out. The estimated job openings were 7.693 million. The prior was 7.673 million. It came out at 8.04 million job openings. So more job openings than people suspect. A lot of reporting on this ballistic missile.
Or equipment to indicate that this was imminent. So obviously something new here this morning. An Israel military spokesman is also speaking just now, saying that we are at high readiness together with our allies. And that spokesperson saying further that our aerial defense systems are fully prepared. So we do know that the State Department will be briefing at 1:15 p.m. today. We'll be keeping an eye on that, and we'll know more then, if not sooner. We do know so far that the Treasury yields and the dollar index both briefly dipped on this. Guys, back to you.
Have we heard from President Biden at all, or just the comments
Good question.
from Secretary Austin?
Good question.
Just those comments. We haven't heard from Biden. There is currently not anything on this.
You got to wake him up to hear from him.
Schedule today related to this. We do expect that to change, though, probably in the next few minutes here.
Why?
All right, Megan, thank you very much.
Why do you
Megan
expect it
Casella,
to
as we see a
change?
reversal in crude oil now jumping to the highest in a few days, but
Bingo.
still a jump on that news. WTI crossing the $70 a barrel threshold.
Yeah.
The market also lower, at least if you look at stocks, got that raft of economic data, and perhaps
Everything's
the
going
treasuries,
red
which
right
are
now.
rallying further, teeing off of these kind of scary headlines, but also some of the economic data that we just got. Manufacturing PMIs worse than expected. As Rick just reported, the prices paid index, which is how they're passing on inflation, a sharp drop as well. That in part reflects what we've seen with oil prices, which have been weaker, although better jobs numbers, at least on the job openings, above 8 million. And we know the Fed's been paying attention to that ratio of job openings per unemployed people. And that's something where they've focused on the weakness.
Everything is deteriorating. Everything in this economy is deteriorating at a pace that they are going to try to hide from the American voter for the next 35 days. But I'm telling you, and I think it's been going on for quite a while, and every little drip and drab of information we get confirms that everything about this economy is deteriorating, deteriorating, deteriorating. And you're going to keep seeing a very slow drip. The jobs report on Friday. A surprise to the weak side would pull me much further into really needing another dramatic move. Let's see what else is going on here. By the way, if you haven't seen some of this footage, I mean, let's just take a look at some of the footage. And this is from the 27th, 4 p.m. You know, you hear people say, oh, Florida actually made out okay. Well, you really? No, not really. Nobody made out okay in this. I mean, you just see, just imagine where you live. If this is what it looked like 2 days removed, what is this, the 27th? So what was that? 24, 48 hours removed from the storm. And at least you can still see these buildings. There's parts of North Carolina and Tennessee and places that I saw a shot of a Wendy's that you could barely see the W on the top of the sign that it was a Wendy's. It was almost completely submerged. Completely submerged. Think about, we've all been to a Wendy's before. Think about how much water it has to be for the Wendy's to be completely almost submerged. These pictures are those first pictures were out of Sarasota, Florida. I don't know where these are. But this is footage I hadn't really seen. And every time you find new footage like this, it just gives you a new perspective on the absolute total devastation that water like this does. I'll just skip through a little bit of this.
No more.
Yeah, just terrible. Just terrible. So, all right, let's go over to, before we wrap it up, let's go see if we can get any more information on this. Someone said Benjamin Netanyahu had put out a. By the way, is there anybody who's gotten more attention for all the right reasons than Scott Jennings has this cycle?
I think the optics of this over the weekend for Biden and Harris have been pretty poor. I mean, North Carolina is underwater. These people are devastated and struggling. But you've got Biden at the beach and then saying, what do you want from me? I got on the phone while I was at the beach. And you've got Harris out raising money on the campaign and then taking a photo on a plane. Now, I remember George W. Bush was pilloried for having a photo taken from Air Force One. She's got a photo on a plane, and the earphones don't appear to be connected to the phone, and the paper looks like it's blank. So it looked like a stage sort of thing. I thought the optics for them were very bad.
Bush, she was people who need it.
I think the optics of this over the weekend for Biden and Harris have been pretty poor.
Yeah, I mean, Scott Jennings walks into the Beehive every single night on there and has to deal with these losers, but he continually is on message. Natalie Winters, North Carolina power outages are due to shortages of transformers, electrical equipment. White House recently signed a $422 million energy assistance deal with Ukraine, giving them materials needed by North Carolina right now, including 1,093 generators, 11 auto transformers, 460 tons of transformer oil, 495 instrumental transformers, 203 power transformers, and billions more in aid.
These people today don't know what a strike is.
Right.
When my men hit the streets, from Maine to Texas, every single port will lock down. You know what's going to happen? I'll tell you. First week, be all over the news every night, boom, boom. Second week, guys who sell cars can't sell cars because the cars ain't coming in off the ships. They get laid off. Third week, malls start closing down. They can't get the goods from China. They can't sell clothes. They can't do this. Everything in the United States comes on a ship. They go out of business. Construction workers get laid off because the materials aren't coming in. The steel's not coming in. The lumber's not coming in. They lose their job. Everybody's hating the longshoremen now because now they realize how important our jobs are. Now I have the president screaming at me, I'm putting a Taft-Hartley on you. Go ahead. Taft-Hartley means I have to go back to work for 90 days. That's a cooling off period. Do you think when I go back for 90 days, those men are going to go to work on that pier? It's going to cost the companies money to pay their salaries. Well, they went from 30 moves an hour maybe to 8. They're going to be like this. Who's going to win here in the long run? You're better off sitting down and let's get a contract and let's move on with this world. And in today's world, I'll cripple you. I will cripple you, and you have no idea what that means. Nobody does.
Yeah. It's like sitting down with John Gotti. What would be the difference? What would be the difference between that guy and him? Nothing. And as appropriate, who is this that wrote this? Jordan Schlegel says, threatening the entire U.S. supply chain and declaring a willingness to impose suffering upon the American people is a pretty scumbag move. Union bosses are almost always thugs. And that's the president of the Dockworkers from Maine to Texas. And that's basically how he feels about you. And Joe Biden's supposed to be his guy, right? He's the big union president. That's his guy. Kamala Harris, October surprise psyops. The dock strike is all staged. Kamala will come in and negotiate a deal that saves the day. The mainstream media will make her out to be a hero. Bookmark this tweet. Ryan Matta. I guess that's one way to think about it. New Florida Hispanic voters poll. Trump 48% plus 7 over Harris. Yeah, Matt Margolis is exactly right. Yeah, please, Democrats, keep wasting all sorts of money in Florida. Keep seeing these people. Oh, Florida's close. Oh, it's going to be closer. Yeah, okay. Yeah, good luck. Good luck with that. Good luck with that. No one needs to hold their breath about anything in Florida. If we have to hold our breath in Florida, we have bigger problems everywhere because the Democrat Party has been decimated in Florida. And unfortunately, that's the only place that's been decimated. I'm trying to find... someone said Benjamin Netanyahu put out a...
A lot of people feel like the American dream is further and further away. That if you work hard and play by the rules, it's a little bit harder to get ahead. It's a little bit harder to support a family, a little bit harder to buy a home. The world I grew up in was one where I think for the first time really in American history, my parents' generation did not expect their children to necessarily have a better life than they did. And you saw that in all kinds of different ways, but there was this sense growing up in Middletown in the 1990s that a lot of people didn't expect the future to be better than the past, and that's a really unique and a really tragic thing. The jobs started to disappear from that community, drugs started to move in, hopelessness started to move in, and so a lot of people who really knew that the future would be better than the past actually found a world that was a lot more difficult and a lot more challenging. I wrote Hillbilly Elegy because I wanted to give people a sense of what it was like to live in a community like mine. I didn't think a whole lot of stories were told about white working class Americans. I didn't think a lot of stories were told about people who were struggling with some of the problems we were struggling with, joblessness, drug addiction, and so forth. And I thought that I could tell a story that would make people understand my family a little bit better, and maybe in the process, understand the struggles of a lot of families. I come from the places that I want to represent, and what we need is to stop sending people that are of the DC swamp. We need to send people who are of the places they aim to represent. I want to fight for the people that I come from.
The American media has been laundering foreign disinformation. It is disgusting. Instead of talking about the crises in our country, they try to silence the people who are experiencing them. Who do you want answering the phone? Do you want a person who hides from the friendly American media, or do you want a person who takes a bullet to the head and stands up and says, fight, fight, fight? Kamala Harris, you ought to have respect enough for your own people to enforce their border laws and listen to them. Listen to them when they complain about it. Don't pretend they're bad people. We're not bad people for loving this country. You're a bad person for doing this to the country in the first place.
Yeah, pretty good. Pretty good. Jesse Kelly brings up a good point on this whole strike. He says, I haven't picked a side on this issue and likely won't. It's complicated and ugly. That said, here's example 20 million of why 99% of the time you should keep disagreements private. How's this sound in about a week when the cost of rebuilding your Helene-ravaged home triples? Yeah. The optics of that are not great right now. And the optics of the Biden administration, as Natalie Winters points out, sending all of these electrical needs to an electrical grid problem. And when you look at now what's going on in Ukraine and you look at what's going on in North Carolina, not great.
He is being treated not just as a former president, but almost as though he is a sitting president. As Boris, you just noted, getting a briefing from FEMA, getting a briefing from the National Guard. That is not something that is typically just offered to a candidate. They are treating him as though he is a former president who is there to help. And one thing that I had earlier during our 1 p.m.
You know why? Because he's actually there. Again, part one would be showing up. Not saying, oh yeah, I was on the phone for 2 hours from the beach, taking fake pictures in your airplane leaving San Francisco, which you've ravaged and destroyed, and your party has, taking fake pictures of you on your iPhone like you're making very important notes. No, part one would be actually showing up. And when you show up, people respond.
Conversation was that Donald Trump did not have that much to offer in terms of resources since he is not a sitting president. But
yeah, see how stupid the arguments is? People in these places don't think, people in these places just want to feel that there's hope. People in these places just want to see somebody who they look at and think, well, maybe I should have some hope that somebody thinks about me. That's what they're thinking. They're not thinking, well, what does this guy have to offer? No, they're thinking, can I get some clean water and maybe something to eat and the ability to call a loved one? And how do I rebuild my life? That's what these people are thinking about. So a former president of the United States showing up there gives them hope and nothing more. And that's what it's all about. These people are so stupid.
I will note that he and the campaign say that they have arrived in that area with trucks full of supplies that they plan on giving out. So there is something there for them to offer. He also said that he had a tanker truck full of gasoline, which obviously, if you've ever covered one of these storms, you understand that one of the first things and hardest things to come by is gasoline. So he said that he was going to be giving that out. He is clearly taking this seriously as a politician is on the ground, trying to show that he is there in support of the people on the ground in Georgia.
Even the way she phrases it, he's trying to show like it's an act. Crazy.
I've also been talking to the members here on the ground, the individuals here that are now taking to the picket line. They tell me one of their top concerns, inflation that we have all been living under for the past 4 years. They say that their wages are not adequately keeping up with the cost of living increase and that they need these wage increases reflected in their next contract so they can just keep up and get. I've also been talking to the members.
Okay. As far as whether that's true or not, we can decide on another day. But the point being, if this is going to be brought up tonight in the debate, there you go. There's one way to bring it up. If that's what they're saying. They're saying we can't keep up with Kamala Harris and Joe Biden inflation, which is why we need a 75% raise and why we're striking. You would think that should be the first question out of the box tonight, since this situation has the biggest chance to affect every single person who lives in this country, irrespective of party. If Trump loses and doesn't run again in 2028, Tucker Carlson could very well emerge as the leading contender for the nomination. A populist party that nominated Trump in 3 presidential elections in a row is a party that could nominate Tucker. What's everybody think about that? What's everybody think about that? Think Tucker Carlson, number one, would want to? And would you like to see Tucker Carlson as a future nominee of the Republican Party? Troy says, tuck that. Tucker wouldn't run. Yeah, I don't know. That sounds like a stretch to me. All right, I don't know. How did I start this Twitter thing? I think I was looking for Benjamin Netanyahu, but you're basically getting a look at this is what I do all day anyways.
Do you think the government is doing enough?
Honestly, I don't know how you did not have a formal press conference or something from either President Biden or Kamala Harris. I mean, how do you not say anything for 4 days? They've been stranded for 4 days, and this is the first we've heard from them at all. FEMA is not on the ground there at all. They are not in these cities. Not in these towns and not in these villages.
Does your relative have food? Does she have water? Does she have the medication she needs?
They have a minimal amount of water. They have a minimal amount of food. They were able to get slightly down the mountain to get a little bit of gas, but they haven't been able to cut their way out yet.
When you say cut their way out, what do you mean?
There's trees down. You have to have chainsaws up there to get the trees out of the roads. And that is if the mudslides didn't take the roads out completely. I can not even tell you how many families, even here outside of Charlotte, that are looking for their loved ones up in that area. No one knows anything.
Ay, ay, ay. Oh. Chimney Rock, North Carolina. A gorgeous mountain tourist town near Lake Lure that was all but washed away. The homes on the other side of the water from Chimney Rock Village have walls completely sheared off. Some look like they're about to fall in the water. Oh my God. The damage to the village of Chimney Rock itself is catastrophic. Mayor Peter O'Leary told me our economy is 100% tourism and it's 100% gone. He says every single structure in the town is either destroyed or severely damaged. Every single structure in the town is either destroyed or severely damaged. The roadsides and concrete in the center of town are cracked and crumbling, which is why we couldn't stay for long and we were asked to stay in the center of the lanes. Water used to be directly below many of these spots. Now it's a 40-foot drop in some places. We saw from the chopper sky zoom that the Lake Lure Flowering Bridge was washed out. The Memorial Highway Bridge next to it was covered in logs that looked like matchsticks sticking out of a box, but up close it was even more overwhelming. We were encouraged to see the damage to Lake Lure didn't appear to be as bad as we had feared, but we were only able to drive through it quickly, but we weren't allowed to stop. But the boats in the marina were all stacked on top of each other. Look at those boats.
That's crazy.
Ooh, man, oh man. Gives you just an idea.
Now, this new data set, as they're calling it, brings the total number of people impacted to 218,000 instead of the 98,000 we first reported. These people were mistakenly marked as having provided documentary proof of citizenship, and Arizona voter registration database now has correctly flagged the impacted individuals. Election officials say they will contact the affected Arizonans with information regarding their status after the general election. That means for now, the Arizona Supreme Court's ruling is going to stay that impacted voters, that includes all of them, will still be able to vote.
Excuse me? Will still be able to vote? 218,000 voters have been wrongly marked as having provided proof of citizenship due to an error. In other words, they haven't shown proof of citizenship. So we don't know if 218,000 voters are actually citizens. these voters will still be able to vote in the general election even though they didn't give proof of citizenship.
Now, this new data set, as they're calling it, brings the total number of people impacted to 218,000 instead of the 98,000 we first reported. These people were mistakenly marked as having provided documentary proof of citizenship, and Arizona voter registration database now has correctly flagged the impacted individuals. Election officials say they will contact the affected Arizonans with information regarding their status after the general election. That means for now, the Arizona Supreme Court's ruling is going to stay that impacted voters, that includes all of them, will still be able to vote. Now, this new data.
I don't even know what to say about that. What was the ruling? I don't know. We're so lost in so many ways in this country. The judicial problems we have on all level of all courts is just sometimes mind-blowing. Absolutely mind-blowing.
An incredible family and incredible friends. My best friend from kindergarten is still one of my best friends.
That's crazy.
Right? Stacey Johnson.
Yeah, that's dope. I love it.
We used to go to the clubs and her father Seville.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Has there ever been anybody more phony and so unserious than Kamala Harris? I mean, seriously, is there anyone more unserious?
Donald Trump got in 2020. So it took historic numbers to beat him, right? And so now we get enamored with the Dick Cheneys and the Liz Cheneys and the Flakes and the da-da-da-da, right? And this man is running around here busting his chops, scaring the hell out of communities, right? And we're trying to figure out how to keep that middle, locked in on her when she needs to bust him in his mouth. I'm saying it like that because he's dangerous. He's dangerous to particular people. And the history of the country is such that we can't play fast and loose with it. Isn't
it incumbent on all of us to protect the people who are in danger by him?
But you never have. That's the rub. You never have. And so part of what we have to do in the midst of this is to engage in a deep-seated political calculus.
How do the people at the table sit there and listen to this drivel? I mean, good gravy. This is what passes as a guest on Nicole Wallace's show. He's a danger to certain people.
Right? Even though we know that she has to get the middle, we got to come out and try to figure out how to turn out in large historic numbers, because we got to keep this troglodyte out of office. Because if he comes in, our babies are going to be in danger. Because remember, those young children are going to grow up with the memory of having to not go to school for the threat of bombs. And somebody told them that their moms and dads eat cats and dogs. I'll get myself together, Claire.
Okay, take a minute. Deep breath.
Well, what about that?
I understand what you're saying. It is.
No, you don't. You don't understand anything he's saying. No one can understand what the hell he's saying. Guy needs a checkup from the neck up. Guy's out of his absolute ever-loving mind. Even you understand what he's saying. You don't understand what he's saying. Nobody understands what he's saying. Guy's nuts. What the hell are you talking about? I mean, that is absolute insanity, man. Could you imagine being that just out of your mind? Holy Moses. I mean, that is just nuts. That is nuts to live every day like that.
More than 300 Iranian missiles. They essentially got all of them. One young girl was killed, so they suffered no casualties. I don't know how you pull that off if you get simultaneous attacks from both Lebanon, from Yemen, and a significant attack out of Iran.
Of course, the bigger picture, General, is that Iran is advancing its nuclear program, and this is just further evidence of why it can't have a nuclear weapon. You know, obviously, this is something the market watches closely. Is it a question of when and not if Israel has to destroy this capability?
Oh, absolutely. But I think it's unrecoverable. I do not believe the Israeli Air Force can destroy the Iranian nuclear capacity. I don't think they have the firepower. It's too well protected, not by air defense so much as underground. I think what we should view Iran as a current nuclear power. They're within weeks of a breakout capability.
Thanks to the Biden
once
administration.
They get several weapons and communicate that to the global community, they will be seen as potentially capable of nuclear retaliation. The Israelis have more than 300 nukes. They've got them at sea on submarines. But once the Iranians have that stated capability, we'll be in a new world. We'll have to reestablish a new kind of deterrence with Iran.
But don't you think that Israel, along with the U.S., can prevent that from happening and would do so?
No, sir, we can't.
Capable of doing it. It would have been
not with this administration. We're not capable of doing it.
Right now, you'd have to strike all known Iranian scientific capabilities, their underground storage areas. They already have the fissile material. We know they have the delivery capacity, both in missiles and potentially in aircraft. So I personally think, the horse is out of the barn, so to speak, and that they're going to be a nuclear power, stated nuclear power, whenever they choose to.
General, appreciate that. We can see the reaction of energy.
And that's directly tied to this administration, because Iran, what they've done in 3.5 now will be 4 years. They have made more advances than they were broke, and we had our foot in our hands around their proverbial neck in the Trump administration. And as the president always says, they would have made a deal if they had 4 more years of Trump in 2020. We would not be sitting here having these discussions. When you flush them with cash, when you take off regulation, when you don't enforce what's already on the books, this is the result of all of that. This is the result of all of that. Let's just give one more check of what else is going on. Commercial. Everybody's in commercial. All right, folks. Let me see if you any comments I missed. Let me go back up. Yeah, it does feel that way, Janet, sometimes, right? Is there any good news? All right. I'm trying to go back through the comments. There's too many of them here, I think, to go through all of them. But anyways, so tonight we'll see you at 8 o'clock. We will be live on all socials throughout the night, obviously. The debate will be 9 to 10:30. Then we'll do some post-debate. And then we'll see what the night brings. Looking forward to it. We'll see if J.D. Vance can do what I expect him to do, and we'll see if the moderators can somehow get waltzed through this night without having to address much. And we'll see how it goes. We'll see if my guess would be these will be the worst questions of any of the debates, because you've got the most inept, weak policy guy on the stage in Waltz, so they're going to have to try to get him through. So we'll see how that happens. All right, everybody, thanks so much. Yes, Alan, we're covering the debate tonight, as I just said, 8 o'clock. We'll be on all socials around 8. And then we'll take you right through the debate. And then post-debate, we'll talk about it. So we'll see you tonight live from Studio 6B. Thanks, everybody, for joining me, and I'll see you tonight. Someone asked me, by the way, is the president speaking this afternoon? If the president is speaking this afternoon, and I think he is, and if I can, I will be streaming that as well, if I can. But either way, I'll see you tonight. Thanks for joining me. Have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you either this afternoon or both this afternoon, and then I'll see you tonight.